portion from the Torah. So that you have these sections put together where there is thematic and grammatical connections. And I'll show you some of those in just a moment. So the hot Torah portion for the Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, which is our portion today, there are portions in the Tanakh that we have, all these different ones for the Torah portion, and then we have a corresponding portion for the hot Torah that came about in 132 to 135 during the time of Hadrian, so that they could study the Torah. They went to Hadrian's Min and said, "So you're okay with us reading the hot Torah, the prophets?" And they said, "Sure, read the prophets. We don't care." And what they had done was they had put together sections so that you could, in a sense, be studying the Torah portion by reading from the hot Torah. If you knew the story, then they could discuss it amongst themselves, and it would be okay. Okay. So the one for our text today is 1 Kings chapter 1. So go with me to 1 Kings chapter 1. So the background of the Torah portion, chapter 23 of Genesis is the death of Sarah. Okay? And all of chapter 23 is given over primarily to Abraham negotiating with Ephron the Hittite for a burial spot for his wife. And he finds this land and the cave of Machpelah, which is Hebron. And I would encourage you to go back and look at the history of Hebron. I've been to Hebron, and every time I try to go to the burial cave there of the matriarchs and the patriarchs there. All the matriarchs are buried there except for, we know, we did not make it there. One of the matriarchs, huh? No. No. We have Abraham's buried there, Isaac's buried there, Jacob's buried there, and then there's the mother of Joseph and Benjamin does not make it there. Rachel. Who said Rachel? Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize. Star for all three of you. Okay. Yes, Rachel died on the way to, and they buried her on the way. Okay, so Rachel does not get buried there. If you go today to the cave of Machpelah, it's in Hebron. In 1929, there was a massacre in Hebron. Google search 1929 Hebron massacre. Not right now. I mean right now. Later on, there was a yeshiva that was almost all the students were massacred there in 1929. Interesting story. Hebron is an interesting place today. Only the area around the cave of Machpelah is under Israeli control. The rest of it is under Palestinian control. Even though Abraham bought the land around there and bought the cave.
And we have proof of that right here.
Yeah, and it refers to that in chapter 23. He actually purchased this area. And he does negotiations. He does negotiations with Ephron in a way that's very, very Semitic. In other words, if we're negotiating, and I say to you, "Oh, look, I give it to you. I'm going to give it to you." And you say, which, by the way, give can mean in Semitic language, sell. Doesn't always mean give. It can mean sell. And that's kind of the nuance. And I say to you, look, it's my, bury your people wherever you want to on my land. It's all good, it's all cool. And you say to me, no, I don't want you just giving it to me. And then I say, look, and this is what Ephron does, he names his price. He says, what's 400 shekels between you and I? Okay, that's the price. And it's a high price. And Abraham says, now remember, shekels at this point are not like they are today. It was the unit of weight. You weigh it out. You weighed it out on a scale. So at the time, now we use that the new Israeli shekel is a negotiable segments of monetary value. But at the time, it wasn't like the way, it was weight. Okay, so Abraham says, oh, you want 400 shekels? Okay, weighs it out 400. And he gets this place to bury his wife. Okay, so that's chapter 23.
Isn't that like 10 times or 20 times
It was huge. It was Abraham pays him high price. And by the way, Ephron names a high price, which is yeah. You always. That's another thing. If you think about America, when I take people over to Israel, I say to them, the price is set high so that you can negotiate down.
So you feel like you've gotten a good deal.
Yeah. Abraham wants to pay full price though. He wants to pay full price so that nobody can say that he took it from this guy. Okay? But we go to the market, and here's how you have to do it. You walk in and you see something, and they walk over to you. And they'll say, oh, that's you say, how much? And they say, 100 shekels. And you go, and then you turn around and you set it down, you walk away. And they go, no, 75 shekels, 75 shekels. And you go, and then they go 50 shekels. Okay, 50 shekels. And then you go, 50 shekels. And that's how you negotiate. We don't do that. We don't walk into a store and go, hey, this is too much. I'm not paying this. It's a fixed price. We don't understand. I mean, in the West, we don't negotiate. We don't barter.
Cars.
Except for cars. Yeah, other than cars.
Cars, furniture.
I always go to secondhand stores and I always barter.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, you go to secondhand stores, you can do that. I think, but you go to Safeway or Fred Meyer, you don't go in there and go, I'm not paying this. They go, well, fine, put it down and somebody else will. Then get out of here.
Swap meet.
Yeah,
It's a swap meet. You can do this. I love. You have to have a little bit of a poker face when you play with these. When you do this, because and you know that you've gotten down to the lowest price when they go, okay, that's it. When they walk away, then you know you've gotten them down to their bottom line price. Okay, but it's a different mentality. We don't think in terms of bartering. And Abraham says, well, all right, Ephron says, well, here's how Ephron puts it. What's 400 shekels between me and you? What's 400 shekels between us? And Abraham says, okay, fine. That's your price. That's what we're taking. Yeah.
It's not only a verbal barter, but when you go in there and you talk about a price, you pull out a little coin purse, which makes it look like you don't have much money.
Right. Yeah.
You scratch around.
You scratch around. Yeah. It's all those little games you play.
Then when you come to the price, you put your wallet out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's. You have to enjoy that kind of approach. If you don't, I go with Americans and they're like, no, I'm just paying the straight price, whatever they ask, I'm just giving them that. And I tell them, no, they purposely put the price high for tourists because they know you're going to come in there and they're going to just pay the full price. Okay, so they purposely inflate this, knowing that there's room to negotiate. Okay, Abraham doesn't try to negotiate. He just says he takes the first. He doesn't try to say, well, how about Abraham? Here's a guy who says to God, how about 45? You take 45? 40? 30? I mean, he's negotiating with God, right? To Ephron, he does his, okay, 400. I'll take 400. That's the price. And he pays for this place to bury his wife in the cave of Machpelah. Now, I did not realize until this past year that the cave of Machpelah has two entrances. There's an Israeli entrance and there's a Palestinian entrance.
Oh.
So when I went this last time, about 5 months ago, it was interesting because the Israeli side was shut down, so they ushered us to the Palestinian side, which I didn't realize was the Palestinian side at the time. And I get to the door and they say, we got to take your shoes off. And I was like, hold on, take my shoes off? That's what they make you do at a mosque. Yeah. And then I went, uh-oh. Now I'm too deep because there was a long hallway. And I'm like, oh no. So we went on the mosque side of the Palestinian side. It's very interesting, much different. But they have these oriental carpets in there. It's very, very, I've never been on that side of the cave. But it's actually in Hebron, Hebron, it's Hebron, Hebron if you're English. But an interesting place. And there's always an IDF presence there because it's a hot spot. So, yeah.
Isn't in Hebrew, Hebron or Ephron, his name is changed because of that high price, that his name is diminished? And that's what some speculate.
Okay.
Pastor Mark talked about.
I think that's one of the anomalies in the Torah, right?
Yeah, that's one of them where the script, Ephron's name is diminished in size in the text.
Yeah,
And
I think you're right.
the Masoretes do this?
No, like in the Torah scroll.
Right.
In the
I'm
scroll
saying
itself.
Masoretes, they
Yeah,
do
the
this.
Masoretic text, yeah.
Okay,
The name is reduced, the script is reduced in size, and some speculate because basically he ripped off Abraham.
okay, I've not heard of
For the
that.
exorbitant
That's not to
price.
say it's not the case, it's just, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't read that section.
Well, I understand that.
Okay, that may be a strike we can do done. That's a possibility. I'm not aware of that. That one has escaped me, but I'll look and see. So you're saying that they diminished the name in
And
the
it's
script?
good. That's what I was, yeah, the name is
Okay.
diminished, I saw that,
All right,
but,
well, look,
those
I'm not aware of that,
that's
but all
why.
right. It's not to say
There's
that.
speculation.
Dots over when he kissed his brother.
Sure, and they do, the Masoretes do some things that are, I pointed some of those things out in the past. Most of that tends to bore you guys, apparently. Like, really. But there are a number of, there are what are called Iture Soferim, there are Tikune Soferim. So one of these times we should go through all the different places the scribes kind of mess with the text that are the interesting text. Some of them are benign, others are a little more interesting. Yeah, broken bob in Leviticus is one place. There's interesting things that they did. They weren't allowed to put, the Masoretes themselves weren't allowed to take stuff out, but they could put stuff above it or below it or, you know, in between, and they could do a lot of things without having to take things out.
It could have been their editorial opinion also.
Editorial
I don't
comment.
know.
There was letters that they wrote large, letters that they wrote small, to kind of make a point, and then they put notations in the margins to say that it's what we've done.
It's almost like bold print, but not bold print.
Yeah, there's kind of a way to do that. One of the earlier ones that we didn't talk about it was in last week's portion, I believe, is where Abraham stands. The text actually had Abraham standing before Yahweh, and the Masoretes did not like the fact that it had Abraham standing before, Yahweh standing before Abraham, because for someone to stand before another person in other contexts could mean that an inferior would stand before a superior. So they didn't like the fact that Yahweh, being superior, was standing before Abraham. It made Abraham look greater than Yahweh. So they switched it and said Abraham was standing before Yahweh. So that's one of the ones that they do in Genesis. Okay, that's early on, where they just change it. And again, I don't think that matters in the sense of, the manuscripts had, the earliest manuscript we had Adonai, Yahweh standing before Abraham. And they just went, that's too, that reeks of Abraham being more, given more honor than God, and so they switched it. But they tell us that they did this. Yeah.
Well, at the same time, that could be more than benign because for Yahweh to do that, same thing Yeshua did. He humbled himself to the point of death. Yahweh has made a habit of humbling himself on purpose to show that he's a servant, even though he is God Almighty.
Right.
It's part of his nature in a way, his character, if
Yeah.
you will. At certain, very specific times, he doesn't make it a habit of it, but there are times when he's.
Yeah, good point.
So,
Example of what he's saying.
In what way?
Isn't that meant to withstand, and the wordage is that of somebody bringing.
Yeah, to some extent, yes. Yeah.
Could
But,
you repeat? I couldn't hear what you said.
He's saying that the Aaronic benediction, we were talking about the Tikkunei Soferim, the emendations of the scribes, where they change the text in order to things that they find indelicate, or that they find are problematic in their as they're reading the text, they kind of go, oh, we don't like this, we don't like the way that reads. And one of the early ones was in our Torah portion, I believe last week, where they say we have Abraham and Yahweh is standing before, it says Yahweh stood before Abraham. And they don't like the fact that it looks like, as you're reading it, it looks like that Abraham is superior to Yahweh because of that language. So they switch it and say Abraham is standing before Yahweh. They just flip them, which again could be benign or could not, depending on how you view it. In my estimation, it's not. It's on the scale. It's not high on the scale of things that they did to change things. And to their credit, they say that the places where they changed it, they mention, they tell us where they did this. So it does, it doesn't go without. And Mark was saying that you have some of the kind of, the exaltation of humanity going on in the Aaronic benediction. So, yeah.
So were they like editors then?
Yes. Yes, they're editing the text as they are self-reading, they are counters. And so they are, as they're doing the text, as these are scribes, or in the apostolic scriptures called scribes, in Hebrew self-reading, they are counting letters and they're counting words. And they want to make sure that you have the exact amount of letters and amount of words, so that you know that you have the text that as you're supposed to have it. And so what they did though was they weren't allowed to take words out. But what you could do is put dots above words, dots below words, splice a word, make a word bigger or smaller, make a letter bigger or smaller. You could, and then in the margins you could make a notation that we did this in order for this reason. Okay. So some of them I would argue are on a scale, in my estimation, are benign. Others are a little more on the serious side.
What would be subjective in the, it seems like, well, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we'll get into this. One of these days I'll do this. I'll just do a whole series on this just for the fun of it. It'll be one of those fun things we do.
Can you give us one example of a major one, though? If you have, if you have.
They changed, well, they didn't like it. They didn't like things that were. There's one where it says that the text says that he raped her, and the word is a very powerful word, very strong word, and they didn't like that, so they translated it and he laid with her. They really pulled back on the language. They actually changed the word because they didn't like the fact that it was a very strong word, and so they basically say this is one of the places where they actually changed the word. They tell us in the margins that they did this. They say, read this. So there are thousands of what we call kativ karei. Kativ means what is written, karei what is spoken. That's Aramaic. So they'll say we have a kativ karei reading. We have thousands of these readings in the margins of the text. Most of them are things like a vav or an article. Okay, so like sometimes it'll say and one they'll say no, just leave the and off, or leave the off. Okay, those kind of things. For the most part, that's benign. For the most part, then you have we have different types of errors. There's errors of the eye. There's errors of the ear. So you have, for instance, error of the ear. Go with me to Psalm 100 as an example. Psalm 100.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's good. Then we'll get back to the. So Psalm 100. Here's an example. You have the word lo. The word lo can mean no or not, and the word lo can also mean, if it's a lamed with a vav, the whole vav, it means to him or for him. If it's lo with a lamed and an aleph, it means no or not. It's a negation. Okay. So the word lo is a homophone, like we have the word here and here. H-E-R-E, H-E-A-R. I need you to go here, or do you hear what I'm saying? Both those sound the same to the ear. Okay. So if a scribe was copying a text and somebody was calling out the words, at times, because the ear hears what it wants to, you hear this, and what you're supposed to write was that. Okay. So here's the example. In Psalm 100, it says this: know that the Lord, verse 3, know that the Lord, He is God. That's the first line. Then it says, and here's where we get the alternate reading, lo versus lo. It is He who made us, and I can then translate it, and we belong to Him, and we belong to Him, and we did not make us. So I could say, we are His people and not ourselves, or it is He who made us and not we didn't make us. Or I could say, it is He who made us and we belong to Him. And here it's very tough to untie the knot, to figure out which one because both are theologically possible and correct. He made us, and the antithesis of that is we do not make ourselves.
So then, yes.
The answer is yes. And, or he made us, and to him we belong. Yes. So untying that particular knot is a very tough one. And this lo, to him versus not, is used in a number of places.
But isn't this kind of like, I mean, we use the beginning and the end and stuff, so we can kind of say that yes, both these are correct, even though we can't,
Yes.
we don't really untie them from one another because they are both correct. This
Right.
side and that side.
So this is the kind of thing that's going on as they are. I would add to that. Today it's interesting. We have in our text a prince in 1 Kings whose name is Adonai Yah. Okay, Adonai Yah, which means Yah is my Lord, Yah is my master. So it's very clear that they had no problem putting Adonai and Yah together in a theophoric name. They had no problems placing those together because here's a crown prince, here's a descendant of David whose name is Adonai Yah. Adonai is Yah. So they're clearly putting those two together, and nobody's having a problem with that. And we find other places, I think, where that's very similar. All right. Let's move on. And to Mary's question, I will come back to that because I was reading through John 6, and John 6 is really, he's trying to show them that the manna, all the way through that chapter, is about him and that he was the one who gave it and that he's the bread of life. And I want to come back to that because I think I'll do some more work on it, but I want to really delve into that because I think it also needs to be handled because of the way Catholicism has dealt with that text. Now, to Mark's initial comments that he was making, the phraseology of father-son terminology is the terminology that we have in the ancient Near East when you have two covenant partners that are co-regents. They will refer to each other as father and one as the son. And they are not talking about the fact that they are connected biologically. They are talking about the fact that they are in a covenant relationship in which one is a co-regent, in which both are co-regents. They are ruling together over a large area. And for the reason that you can never have heaven left unguarded or left abandoned, you always have father-son terminology. This binary terminology of father-son. Okay? Son being on the ground, father being in heaven. Okay, so father having the greater army and the greater territory. So he's always going to be in the heavenly realm. Okay, son comes to this earth. When he comes here, he doesn't have as big an army or as big a land take your notes, please. And at the opening of chapter 24, by the way, the opening of chapter 24 of Genesis, here's the verbal connection with 1 Kings. 1 Kings 1 says, let me get back there, don't want to read it. Yeah, 1 Kings 1 opens, and the king David was old, going in days, and they translate it in your translation, advancing in years, but just going, bo bayamin. So zakein bo bayamin, and if you go back to chapter 24 of Genesis, it describes Abraham the same way. If you notice in chapter 24, it says this. Now Abraham was zakein bo bayamin, same words, exact same. So there's our connection, okay, between these two. And that's the verbal connection. And then there's a few other connections that are also drawn that we'll see as we go through this. All right. The Haftorah reading for the 5th Parashah, Chayei focuses our attention on the death of two very prominent people within the Hebrew Scriptures. The Torah reading focuses on the death of Sarah, the first matriarch of Israel, while the Haftorah focuses on the death of King David. Which, by the way, it's just a little interesting to me that you have in 1 Kings, you have this death recorded at the opening of the book. Normally, you close books with the death of a major individual. Here we have the death of a major individual at the opening of the book. You notice that Moses dies at the end of Deuteronomy, and then we talk about his death at the beginning of Joshua. At the end of Joshua, we have his death. Normally, prominent individuals, we don't have their death mentioned at the opening of the book. However, here we do. Now, it says this. I suggest the reason that so much attention is focused on these two is that both were recipients of a covenant promise from Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Now, admittedly, Sarah was not given the covenant promise, but her husband Abraham was. God had promised Abraham numerous descendants, but the first descendant was Yitzhak, who Sarah would birth in her advanced years. God wanted to perpetuate the covenant specifically through Sarah's birth of Yitzhak. So Sarah was a major player in the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant. David, too, was given a covenant, and we read about it in 2 Samuel 7. Now, go with me here because this is important. Look at 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel chapter 7. This is the Davidic covenant. And watch the father-son terminology, because the Davidic king is going to be a co-regent with God. 2 Samuel chapter 7. And I want to skip down to verse 12. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12. It says, when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, that's Solomon, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be to him a father, look at that, and he shall be to me a son. There's that language again. Co-regents. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, with the stripes of the sons of men. But my steadfast love, my chesed, that's my covenant loyalty, okay, he says, but my covenant loyalty will not depart from him. As I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you, and your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. In accordance with all these words, and in accordance with all this vision, Nathan spoke to David. Okay? So this is going to be a perpetual kingdom. Okay? Shall be made sure forever before me. Okay? So this is the Davidic covenant that God gives to David, that I will be your father and you will be my son. I will rule up here, you will rule down here on my behalf. Okay? The earthly king will rule on my behalf. You'll be the son. This is Psalm 2 language. Go to Psalm 2, which is also messianic. Now look at Psalm 2 and look how we have this language again. So Job, Psalm 2 says this. I want to go over to verse 6. He says, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord has said to me, you are my son. Today I have installed you, or I have begotten you. Okay? I've set you on Zion as a king. Okay? And he's talking about, he says here, I have set my king on Zion. You are my son. Okay? So the Davidic king was a son of God. Okay? The Davidic king was a son of God. This is 2 Samuel 7. This is Psalm 2. This son of God terminology is coming out of this covenantal background in which ancient Near Eastern kings would enter into covenants with each other, and when they did, they were co-regents. And one would call himself the father, and the other would call himself the son. It was in the order of the one who had the biggest army, the biggest land, the biggest amount of money. He would be the father. They would enter into a covenant with each other. So let's say that I'm the king and Mark is a king. And we decide, you know what, let's do this. To make sure that our kingdoms are solid, that nobody can overthrow us, Mark, here's what I'll do. I'll enter into the covenant with you. I have bigger land and a bigger army, but that's okay. That's all cool. I'll be the father, you'll be the son. And if you ever get into any trouble, oh, by the way, if you ever get into any trouble, I'll be with you. I'll be with you. And I keep saying that to you. Mark, if you ever have any financial trouble, I'll be with you. If you ever have any military trouble, I'll be with you. If you ever have any problems with your land, maybe a flood or an earthquake, I'll be with you. And vice versa. I'll expect you to be with me. That's the language we're going to use. And we're going to talk in terms of love. It has nothing to do with emotion or it's covenant loyalty. Love is a covenantal loyalty term. With you. And what does he keep saying? Name this child Emmanuel, God with us. But he keeps saying, I'll be with you, I'll be with you, I'll be with you. Covenant terminology.
Is it like bonded, kind of like that?
Yeah, it's covenantal bonding. That I'm going to do whatever I need to do to fulfill the role of the covenant. Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
Might be a stretch. I'm just wondering, would King David be considered like, even though he wasn't, he would want like kind of the first king because God's stamp of approval?
Yes, and in a sense, he is the first king for this reason.
Yeah, because I was
If you
kind of figuring that with,
Huh?
I was figuring that with Sarah.
Yeah, because if you go back to the promise of the king was that he would come from the tribe of Judah. Well, Saul's a Benjamite. That tells you right there, it's not going to be perpetual. That right there is the big tip-off. But why does Saul get in? Because the people say, ooh, he's a big guy. He'll lead us in and out with our armies. And we want to be like the other nations. And God says, yeah. And then, so what do? So then the prophet goes and he says, he sees the family of David. He sees Eliab, the first son. And he says, well, he's a tall guy. Let's put the anointing on him. And God says, no, not him. Not him. And he says, well, you got any more sons? Yeah, I got one out there dealing with the sheep. Man, he's a scrawny little guy, though. You don't want him. Bring him in there. Brings him in. God says, that's the guy, David. I want David. Like, what? Yeah, I want David.
A little scrawny thing?
He's a little guy at the time.
Were there not some issues with whether or not he was a legitimate son?
Yeah, there's maybe some issues as to his sonship. Some have questioned his, but he's clearly considered a Judahite, and now we can say, okay, this is the one.
And he was a shepherd, right?
Yeah, he's a shepherd. Yeah, I mean, this guy writes poetry. This guy's, by the way,
And he's a son.
you really, by the way, I don't blame Saul because you got to understand, Saul's listening to Casey Kasem's top 10, and he turns on the radio and it says, Saul has slain his thousands, David has 10,000s.
Yeah.
And Saul's going, that's not good. That's a really bad song. I've slain my thousands and David has 10,000s. Wow, the people already are viewing him in a positive light. And by the way, so from here on out, the Davidic, to speak of David, from the time of David forward, is to speak of the Messiah. It's a code word for Messiah, son of David. Yeah, he's a son of David. He's a descendant of David. So somebody is going to sit on the Davidic throne.
Which is why he was a shepherd and all.
Yeah, so it's, okay, so go to the second paragraph here. If I were to choose a theme that connects our Torah portion with the hot Torah, it would be death is inevitable, so how have you prepared? In Genesis 23, Abraham works to find a place to bury his wife amidst his grief at Sarah's death. In chapter 24, Abraham sends his servant on a mission to find a wife for Yitzhak. Chapter 24 has both grammatical and thematical connections with the Torah portion. At the beginning of Genesis 24, Abraham old and advanced in days, and the same description is used of David in 1 Kings 1. By using the same terms to define these very important men, the narrator invites us to compare how they both prepare, or fail to prepare, for the future. In 1 Kings 1, David is presented as someone in ill health and with a bad memory. As one ages, it's not unusual for the body and mind to start giving out, and it appears David is experiencing the effects of aging. Rather than acting, David is acted upon by his servants who summon a young girl to lay by David and keep him warm. Here again, the text resonates with the Torah portion of Genesis 24. Abishag, the woman in 1 Kings 1, is described as being good-looking, which just so happens to be the way that Rivka is described in Genesis 24. Often, but not always, the physical descriptions we are given in the biblical narrative come back to have a play in the later narratives. Biblical narrative is usually reticent to describe the physical features of someone unless it's relevant to the bigger picture. In Kings 1, it's reported that David did not know Abishag, which I suggest may have a double entendre. First, did not know can refer to sexual relations, and second, it could also indicate that David is unaware of what is going on around him. In Genesis 24, we are told that Rivka had not known the man, which speaks to her moral character as virtuous. The enlisting of Abishag to comfort David is going to come back later and be the downfall of Adonijah. If you go to chapter 22, Solomon is installed as the king after this party with Adonijah. Adonijah throws a party. But Adonijah fails to invite 4 people.
Key people.
He doesn't invite Solomon. He doesn't invite Bathsheba, the mother. He doesn't invite David, and he doesn't invite Nathan. And if you're going to have a party and a coronation, it's always good to have these other people there. Okay? So Adonijah throws a big party. He says, I'm the king. Adonijah's the king. Well, Bathsheba says, no, that's not a good thing. It was supposed to be my son Solomon. So she goes to David and says, didn't you say that Solomon was supposed to be the king? David says, yeah, that's what I said. Nathan comes in, he says basically the same thing. Okay? Didn't you tell us that, didn't you tell your wife, the queen, that Solomon was supposed to be the king? Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. Well, Adonijah is deposed, and Solomon is coronated as the king. Then, in a real smart move, Abishag goes to Bathsheba, and he says, hey, I want you to ask Solomon if he'll get, after David dies, he says, I want you to ask Solomon if he'd give me Abishag as a wife. And in verse 22 of chapter 22, Solomon says to his mother, you might as well just ask for the kingdom and the throne. He wants the throne. Because if Abishag was by David, then maybe she's a prince or princess. Maybe she's queen, okay, in the way the people think. And so by asking for Abishag, he's saying, give me the woman who was the last one with David, right? That'll make me legit. So Adonijah is trying to get legitimacy. And Solomon, he's got it all figured out. He goes, he's asking for the kingdom. That's what he wants. Now, we don't know if Bathsheba understands that or not when she's used in this whole thing or not. Has she figured out that this is what he's asking for? Bottom line is, Adonijah is on the outs. And Solomon basically says, okay, this guy's got to go. He still has aspirations for the kingdom. Okay. Now, join with me on the third paragraph here. The fourth paragraph on page 1. In Kings 1, David is acted upon as his body and mind waste away, and there is little indication that he has prepared for the future of his kingdom. Adonijah has crowned himself king, and David is unaware of his coronation party. David was the one who should announce to the people who the new king would be, but it's Bathsheba, his wife, that manipulates, and I put David there to put that in quotes, David into placing Solomon on the throne of Israel. Bathsheba enlists the help of Nathan the prophet to help her convince David to announce that Solomon is the new king. We have no prior textual evidence that David had promised the throne to her son Solomon at an earlier time. Now, it may have been that he did say to her, and we don't have it recorded, Solomon will be the new king when I die.
But didn't Yahweh already tell him that Solomon was going to
Yes.
go to town for him?
Yes, that's But he didn't, we don't have any recording to tell us about Shabbat. All right. Back in Genesis 24, the servant of Abraham heads out to find a wife for Yitzhak, with the explicit instructions that his son must not marry a Canaanite. Let me suggest here that one of the ways we can help prepare the way ahead for the next generation is to make sure they marry a God-fearing person. Besides being a person of moral character, Rivka demonstrates hospitality to strangers and kindness to animals. If our children marry someone who is a Canaanite, then the syncretism that follows should not be a surprise. In the West, we are not accustomed to arranged marriages, but at least having parents involved in the choice of their children's life mate is a good thing. I mean, come on. You know, we don't think about this in the West. We say as parents, my parents, you know, get a good education, get a good job, make good money. But the truth is this, and nobody says this, and why I don't know. But the person you marry does impact the rest of your life. And they're going to be a major player in your life. So, besides your decision to come to faith, besides that, the major decision you make is who are you going to be a life partner with?
Before Mark and I started dating, he went to my father and he said, "Do I have your permission to court your daughter?" And my dad, his answer to that was, "How is your relationship with God?"
Good.
And then after he talked about that with Mark, he said, "Yes, you have permission to court my daughter."
Yeah.
Actually, he didn't say that. He kept waxing along about other stuff, and finally your mom went, "Will you answer his question?"
That was my dad's response. How is your relationship with God?
Absolutely. No, but I think we have to think in terms of, as parents and grandparents, how do we instill in our children and our grandchildren the idea that you need to marry well? That the person you marry needs to be a godly person, a kind person. Look at how they respond to strangers and look how they respond to animals. Are they a person of kindness and gentleness? Are they a moral person? Morality, kindness, gentleness, godliness. And say, look for that kind of person as to be your life's mate. At least giving them some guidelines and some guidance so that the person, because look, the person you marry and the family you marry into does have an impact on your life. You know, and so if we just say, you know, hey, go out there, I mean, parents say, go out there and play the field, you know, be a player, you know, and then what happens? I've said this before, that mentality, here's what happens. People go out, they date, they get dumped. They date, they get dumped. They date, they get dumped. And they begin the practice of divorce. Because here's what happens. Eventually, at one of these peaks, they get married. Probably because they got children on the way. Or they've had relations. Then now instead of calling it getting dumped, it's divorce. And they go through this cycle. And all that does is cause all kinds of problems. It just creates all kinds of problems. And their life continues to be on this roller coaster. And I'm talking about people within the communities of faith. Our numbers aren't any better for people outside these walls.
Ours are worse.
Maybe worse at times.
Yeah.
You know, you'd think that saying, coming to a community of faith will help strengthen your marriage. Well, not necessarily. So that means to me that fathers and mothers need to work with their children and grandparents to say, hey, you know what? Look for somebody who's kind. Look for somebody who is kind to strangers. People don't even know. I'm in line yesterday at a business, and a guy just walks up to me, and he just starts talking to me. Just the kindest guy. And we had this amazing conversation. Just incredible conversation. I never met this guy. He walks up and starts talking to me. He doesn't just say, hey, how's it going? He goes, hey, he starts talking to me right away. I mean, he's in a conversation with me. Actually, I was listening to it first. And he's just jabbering away. And I'm like, okay, and let him talk for a little while. And I'm like, hey, we start talking back and forth. I never met this guy before. I've never seen him before. I've never seen him since. But he's a kind of person that just meets people and he loves strangers. He's okay with he's comfortable in his skin. And you're kind and you're compassionate and you're gentle and you're moral. These kind of values. And you say, look for that kind of a person.
Do the right thing.
Yeah. One here, one.
Somebody that I went to church with, she was kind, she was gentle, but her mom's advice to her, Katie, was don't buy a car until you test drive. And that was her mentality with everything.
And, you know, the ironic thing is that actually would work if people applied it in the way that it makes sense to. You don't take a car on test drive and go or do burnouts and all that kind of stuff. That's what you do when you own it.
Yeah.
When you go on a test drive, anyway.
Yeah, I get it.
That's not the
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I know, and that's how most people see it as,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this on.
No, I'm just telling you, 26 years plus of watching, of performing, doing weddings, and doing counseling, marriage counseling. I'm telling you that you see people, and you think to yourself, why in the world would you become involved with this individual? You can see that it's just bad. And you can see that this is going to be a problem. I mean, you already have telltale signs that this is a problem, that they're a problem. And yet they go, the heart goes where the head knows it shouldn't. And they make a decision and it's messed up. And then they have to pay for it the rest of their life. Because it's a major decision. It's a major league decision, the person you're going to marry. So I'm saying that the question I ask is, death is inevitable, so how have we prepared? How have we prepared? And my question to us is this, and I keep asking myself this, how have I prepared the next generation to take the mantle and to move forward? And if they have not married well, we have not done our job. The second issue that comes, there's another question. Yes, there we go.
Just a statement of saying that, careful who you choose or you marry. Look at King Solomon in his old age.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Solomon's an example of someone who went off the reservation when it came to marriage and relationships. Absolutely. And by the way, I think the 1 Kings chapter 1 to 11 comes to bury Solomon. I think it comes to bury him. At the end of it, he's a messed up individual. Started off right, but went awry. The last paragraph here in 1 Kings 1, Bathsheba along with Nathan remind the king he had promised Solomon he would be the heir to Israel's throne. Let me suggest that here is another way that parents can gently impact the future of their children. The work or vocation that one does helps to shape a person over time. And I believe it's good when parents come alongside their children to guide them into a good vocation. I'm not saying that parents should force something onto their child, but I do believe that godly parents can help children into vocations that are satisfying and bring lifelong enjoyment. That's another area I think we can help our children, at least some guidance. I'm not saying force them into something, but watch their inclinations and see where they are, have inclinations, and then gently guide them and direct them in those areas, so that they choose a vocation of life that is going to be fulfilling and is going to bring out the best in them. I think we can begin thinking in those directions and helping children move in those directions. So, all right, we got to close this off. I'm way over time, but that's all right. Very good sections, a lot of stuff in these sections. And yeah. All right. Take your stewards. And go with me to page 95, the traditional manual. Please stand. Page 95, traditional manual. Aleno la shalea pledo mako, la teke la reshi, shalo asanu kugoye haratson, velo samanu ke mishpako adema, shalo samka kenu kahem, vigol rahenu ke kohamonam, vianaknu korim, Umistaka bilumodim, lifte melech moke hamaki, hakadosh baruchu, bayom hahu, yihe Adonai echad, ushemo, sign our portion is theirs for our lot like all the masses. We therefore bow and worship and give thanks before the King of Kings, the Holy One. Blessed is He. On that day, Adonai will be one, and His name one. If you're observing a yard site memorial, you may remain standing. If not, you can be seated. Page 97 for the mourner's cottage. Yit Gadol v'Yikadesh, Shemei Rabah v'Aliyah v'Barah v'Yirateya. V'Yimlik Makuteya v'Kayon v'Chayei Tikol Beit Yisrael v'Agalah v'Bizman Karev v'Imru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabah v'Barak v'Olam v'La'amei Almayah. Yit Barak v'Yishtabak v'Yitpa'ar v'Yitramah v'Yitnaseh v'Yithadar v'Yithalel Shemei Nekudashah v'Rikhu. Le'aleha min kol birkata v'shir v'ta fish v'tekata v'nemetekata v'amaran v'almiyah v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlemei rabah min shemaya v'chayim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'rama uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael V'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'rama, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Oseh shalom b'rama, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. Heavenly Father, we ask that you comfort those who mourn. We ask for this comfort in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, our Redeemer. For it's in His name that we do pray. Amen. Please stand with me for the Aaronic benediction. Page 99. Yivrekach Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ye'er Adonai panai v'elecha v'yikunecha. Yisei Adonai panai v'elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May Adonai bless you by keeping you.
May it be His will.
May Adonai shine His face toward you by being gracious to you.
May it be His will.
May Adonai lift up His face toward you and grant you His peace.
May it be His will.
Amen and amen. Please join me across the way for the time of Oneg.